Behavioral addiction rarely looks chaotic. Often it looks like success from the outside and a private loop you keep returning to because it reliably takes the pressure down. Crypto at 2 a.m., endless scrolling, gambling, porn, shopping, gaming. Different behaviors, same mechanism. Your brain found something that works. Something that delivers relief or excitement or numbness in under a minute. And once it learns that shortcut, it returns to it. There is often a specific context that creates the conditions for this, and it matters clinically. For some, it is what happens when wealth removes natural friction. Most people have to wait, earn trade-off. That friction, as uncomfortable as it is, keeps the dopamine system calibrated. When it disappears entirely, the brain gradually loses the habit of delay, and the question of what you actually want becomes almost impossible to answer. For others, it's the opposite. A life so full of pressure, obligation, and visibility that the loop becomes the only place that belongs entirely to you. The one thing nobody can schedule, optimize, or take a position on. For others still, it started as a reward, a release, as a thing you allowed yourself after everything else was handled. Different origins, same mechanism. And underneath all of them, usually the same unanswered question: who am I? And what do I actually want when I stop performing long enough to ask?
Beneath the surface, there is almost invariably a first arrival anxiety, undiagnosed ADHD, a trauma history, or a mood that swings without a clear compass. The behavior was not the problem. It was an attempt to regulate something painfully real. That distinction dictates our entire clinical approach. We map what is actually happening in the nervous system, looking at things like dopamine regulation, because what presents as an urge is often the brain demanding a correction it has become entirely dependent on making in one specific way. We look at impulse circuitry, at how the system has learned to respond to discomfort, and at the neurological pattern that keeps the cycle of stimulation and relief running long after the conscious decision to stop has been made. Understanding that pattern is what makes it possible to interrupt it. Our first move is to stabilize the foundations, sleep and neurological rhythm. When those are steadied, the urge loses its frantic edge and becomes something that can finally be sat with. One team, one map, precise, unhurried, and entirely bespoke.
Behavioral addictions are often invisible as addictions because there is no substance, no obvious line. There's just something you keep doing, more than you want to, in ways that are starting to cost you things you care about. Two things appear most often. The first is a system that found its off switch. High performers who discovered a behavior that delivers rapid relief after sustained output. Up to deliver, down to recover. The person inside the machine is another matter entirely. The second is escalation. Behavioral addictions like gambling, social media, pornography, gaming are architecturally engineered to create tolerance and require more input over time. The escalation is the intended outcome of the design, not a reflection of who you are. With pornography especially, that escalation can reach places that genuinely frighten the person involved. The shame becomes consuming. It's worth saying clearly. The escalation reveals how far the system has been pushed. It's treatable. My role is to diagnose what is driving the pattern and build a precise plan around it. We are creating the conditions where change becomes possible, supported by the full clinical team, every step.
Compulsive behavior is a nervous system strategy. When you have been running at a sustained high output under pressure without real recovery, the brain reaches for the fastest relief available, automatically, reliably. That is why the behavior can feel essential even after it has stopped being pleasurable. It was doing a job. We built something in its place: sleep, stability, lower baseline arousal, recovery capacity that belongs to you. When the nervous system settles, the world gets wider. The silence becomes something you can sit with, and the question of what you actually want becomes answerable.
The shame that comes with behavioral addiction is often what drives it deeper. Relief arrives first, then shame, then the next episode has to be more hidden, more controlled, more secret, which deepens the shame, which makes the need for relief even more urgent. Each cycle doesn't return you to where you started. It pulls you further in, and that shame can reach a place that feels like evidence of something wrong at the core. It isn't. But it's that belief that keeps people from reaching out, sometimes for years. In its most extreme form, this is why gambling and pornography addiction carry among the highest suicide rates of any addiction. Because shame isn't just guilt about what you've done, it's the belief that you are bad. And when that belief takes root, it becomes a self-hatred that can turn lethally self-destructive. What most people don't realize is that behavioral addiction is rarely about the behavior itself. It's about what the behavior is helping you soothe or avoid. Underneath the loop, there's almost always deep pain that feels unbearable to sit with. The addiction becomes the nervous system's solution, a reliable source of soothing, numbing, or momentary gratification that keeps you one step ahead of something you learned long ago was too much to feel. It makes perfect sense as a survival strategy. The problem is that it stops working and the cost keeps rising. Shame survives in silence. It needs secrecy to hold its power. When you finally speak the thing you've been carrying in the presence of someone who meets it without judgment, but with real understanding, something shifts. The weight of it begins to break apart. We make the truth speakable, and in doing so, we diminish its hold over you.
Compulsion lives in speed. The hand reaches, the screen opens. The behavior is already happening before a choice has been registered. What we train is the gap. Short, repeatable practices specific to your pattern and your risk windows that create enough space to notice, because the choice was always there. In many cases, it had simply been covered over by avoidance and compensation strategies that developed long before you were aware of them. Learning to observe the pattern without immediately obeying it is what begins to shift it. Responding rather than reacting, starting to recognize what the urge is actually pointing toward. Over time, the urge becomes information rather than instruction. You become someone who responds to it on your own terms.
The work doesn't end when you leave. It evolves. Your same team stays connected, reviewing your sleep, focus and mood, refining what's needed as life resumes. This continuity is part of the medicine, a living bridge between treatment and real life. Evenings are where most patterns live and where they begin to change. Each client works with a live-in therapist matched carefully to temperament and goals. You are supported by more than 15 specialists, physicians, therapists, and experts, all sharing one record, one plan, and daily communication. Switzerland is not just a location, it's an active ingredient in your recovery. This country holds a centuries-old memory of health and sanctuary. We're not just a clinic, we are part of a long tradition of restoration. There is a reason the world comes here to heal. When you arrive in Zurich, you step into a culture that values privacy and precision above all else. In a standard medical setting, the environment often works against you. It's sterile, noisy, and unfamiliar. That creates a specific kind of stress. For a high-functioning individual, a drop in your standard of living creates distraction. If you're worrying about your comfort or fighting the logistics of your stay, you're not focused on your health. That is unnecessary noise. We view comfort as a clinical necessity. We deliver our care in a private residence and partner with the Dolder Grand Spa, the best Switzerland has to offer. We know that psychological resistance is a vital diagnostic tool. It tells us where the work needs to be done. But we want to ensure that the only resistance you feel is the one that matters, the internal one. We remove every ounce of external friction, from the texture of the room to the seamlessness of the service, so that nothing stands between you and the clinical work.
We are the connective brain between your results and your plate. With our dietitians and chefs, we design a culinary healing experience you actually enjoy. Timing meals, balancing glucose, reducing inflammation, so you feel good while you eat and still feel good after.
The experience is end to end. We organize private aviation and meet you on the tarmac. A Bentley transfer brings you directly to the door. You do not touch a bag. You do not navigate a terminal. Our team acts as the defenders of your time. We handle the logistics, the security, and the details invisibly. You do not have to trade your lifestyle to get your health back. Speak privately with a lead physician today.